12:03. We've got a lot of folks here, so thank you for that. And how about we kick this off? It's so good to see all the names. Obviously, not everybody in person. Who would have thought that a year ago we were just starting to re-envision what Adcraft would mean in this new COVID times. But here we are still today working through things. So I first wanted to just kick things off and thank you guys all for your support. Every single one of you who paid your money or took the time to block out on your calendar to attend an Adcraft event in the last 12 months, we sincerely thank you. It's helped us to do what we do, which is support this ad community. In the Detroit ad community, there's not a better ad community out there. So we're honored to serve this industry. My name is Andrew Robinson. I am the 115th president of Adcraft Detroit. And on behalf of our entire board of directors, who I can't thank enough, we want to thank you for your support of Adcraft. Adcraft is the oldest marketing association in the country, and we've remained a vital part of Detroit's marketing community because of people like you. So as a nonprofit organization, we rely on support of our members through annual dues, through sponsorships, and through event registrations. Also professional development, networking, and various other philanthropic programs that we host throughout the year. Thank you for registering to today's webinar. And please, if you haven't done so yet, remember to renew your annual membership when you receive an email from us. It'll probably come from me or Michelle Rosso. With the warmer weather approaching, we have a lot of exciting events coming up. So not only if you've renewed your membership, do you get to attend our first ever members only webinar series that we're in today, but there's so many more events that come along with it. Next up is March Madness. March Madness is upon us starting, what is that, tomorrow or Thursday? And our Young Professionals Club has brought back our March Madness virtual beer pong tournament. The event will take place on Thursday, March 25th, so next Thursday. So if you haven't signed up, grab a partner and register today. I've been told it's really fun. Adcraft, you all know this one, you all love it. It's coming back. We put Adcraft up foursomes on sale yesterday. And the North course, we're playing on the North and the South course of Detroit Golf Club. North course sold out in less than 4 hours. So what that means is go on and register for the event. If you plan on playing and you didn't get your foursome just yet, jump in there. We also still have opportunities for sponsorships. So give me a call, shoot me an email, and we can talk about sponsorships for Adcraft. But it is going to be awesome this year because we get to see people in person. GM webinar series program. That is what we're in right now. And we're so excited to kick off our member only webinar series today. On select Tuesdays in March and April, we'll be hosting a fireside chat featuring 4 of the top marketers at GM. If you've registered for the all speaker bundle for $60, there's nothing more that you need to do. We will automatically send you the Zoom link the Monday before each webinar. I'd like to thank the Adcraft board member who really put this all together, the 2 people, Robbie Hucka and Janelle Tischer, for their hard work to make this event possible. This has been months in the making, and thank you too for putting this all together. We couldn't be more excited. And finally here, I'd like to thank our sponsors. Thank you to our premier sponsors, McCann Detroit, MRM, Commonwealth McCann, and Weber Shandwick for their support of our entire GM webinar series. And thank you to Leo Burnett and Carat for sponsoring today's session. So now let's get into it. Today's fireside chat, which will be moderated by Cadillac agency partner Emily Shahady, Executive Vice President and Managing Director at Leo Burnett Detroit, along with John Kovalcik, Executive Vice President, Global Business Director at Carat Detroit. 2 very long but very impressive titles. I assure you that the conversation today is going to be equally as impressive. Can't wait to hear from the 2 of them. Without further ado, I'd like to introduce today's speaker, Melissa Grady, a Global Chief Marketing Officer of Cadillac. Melissa was appointed to Global CMO of Cadillac in September of 2019, and she has been busy. As CMO, Melissa oversees strategic marketing for the Cadillac brand around the world. Under her leadership, Cadillac has embraced a data-driven approach and launched the Make Your Way. We have Make Your Way, We Have Your Way Back COVID-19 response and Never Stop Arriving brand campaigns. She has in-depth experience and expertise in performance marketing and technology, including new and emerging approaches, and has delivered keynote speeches at several conferences, including AdWeek, AdExchanger, AUB, Incite, and various others. Sorry. But the most important one is that she's here with us today at Adcraft. So thank you so much. And please help me give a warm Adcraft welcome to Melissa, Emily, and John. The floor is all yours.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Andrew. Really appreciate that. First, want to start off by thanking Melissa for being a part of this GM speaker series. Thank you so much. And for being a part of the Adcraft Marketing Advisory Council this past year. For those members who aren't familiar with the Marketing Advisory Council, it's really quite an amazing group. It's the top CMOs from around the Detroit area. And they get together quarterly. They help advise us on curriculum and also direction for where we want to take Adcraft. So their viewpoints are really critical as we continue to modernize. So today, we really want to talk to Melissa. She's been a phenomenal leader in modernizing really any institution she's been a part of, which is awesome. She also brings together with her, a championship of collaboration and integration across the agencies. And that's really brought to light, I think today by being joined by my partner in crime, Emily Shahady, who, as mentioned before, with Leo Burnett, is the strategic and creative agency of record for Cadillac. I represent the media and audience agency of record for Cadillac. So today, just like every day, we're partnering to benefit Cadillac and help tell this amazing story, this amazing brand. So we're really excited. Hopefully you are as well. It's going to be a really quick 45 minutes or so. So with that, I'll turn over to my partner, Emily, and take it away.
So thanks, John. Really appreciate you joining, Melissa, and hello, everyone. John and I joke about a thing we have in common is we don't have poker faces. You know what we're feeling. And so it's the love between us is genuine. That's for sure. We do get along so well. And Melissa, it's a testament to, your team building and, encouraging cross-agency partnerships. So we appreciate that. And thank you, John. So we'll just kind of get started with, kind of a personal question about lots going on in the world today, clearly. And you always send us texts about articles and things that are inspiring you or getting you all riled up. So tell us a little bit about, what's inspiring you personally, professionally, that's going on today. Who's inspiring you?
First of all, just thank you everyone for the really warm welcome. I'm so excited to be here. And thank you, Emily and John. As always, love when this triumvirate is together. So very excited to do this with you today. Who inspires me? This is one I've been thinking a lot about lately. And there's a few different directions I want to take it. The first thing that inspires me, honestly, is my nieces. I have 5 of them. And when I look at the world that they're growing up in, and I know that we've just been through a year that's been very difficult, but a lot of things were brought to light, I think, that's going to put us in a better place. And so when I look at my nieces and the world that they're growing up in, I want to keep driving change and making sure that they don't have those moments of being the only woman in a room, to look around and not have to feel like they have to fight harder, that things are different for them. So as we really drive towards equity and justice for all, I look at how can I make that world for them. 2 others who I want to highlight for inspiring me are women who are doing so much in the world to really drive that. The first one is Kamala Harris. Politics absolutely aside, the day that the election was called and I saw her get up and I saw the reaction of the little girls, and I can't, it really makes me emotional. I can't tell you how many people I heard with their daughters saying, "Mommy, there's someone in the White House that looks like me." And it's amazing that she has given girls of all ages, of all backgrounds, this person to look up to. And I remember, you know, being younger in my career, being little, the people who I would look up to, and there's so many more now, but I think she's so special, and she really inspires me with the way that she brings her whole self to work. We all know who, you know, her family is, her husband, and how she kind of changes roles. And it's so inspiring to me. And it's something that I look to as I'm trying to achieve the great things I want to, but also achieve balance. The other one that I just this past year really grew to like love is Jacinda Ardern in New Zealand. And my favorite part about what she did is not that she was one of the first to eradicate COVID from her nation, you know, not that she is a working mother, but like that she just brings this humanity to what she's doing. And the example of that I just love is last year, as we're going into the pandemic and everything was going into lockdown and they were very strict there, she went out and made a statement about the fact that the Easter Bunny and the Tooth Fairy did not have to follow quarantine. And so there was this moment of joy and hope. And I think when you can take something that's so difficult, but bring that humanity and bring that hope to it, to me, it was so inspirational and something that I really aspire to.
Yeah, thanks for that, Melissa. I know clearly we knew you were going to lean into women power. So that's why we had this amazing picture while you talked.
No, that's incredible. I think, you know, we're all inspired every day by just the rise of people during this pandemic. And just as Kamala and Jacinda have, you know, very different backgrounds, but kind of rose to be leaders, you know, your CMO background is very different. I think that, you know, when you look at any CMO, they all follow a different path to get to their destination. But yours was decidedly different. You know, you have a background in data, in e-commerce, in direct marketing, and that's not traditional, right? That's a little bit different, which is incredible. So we have a lot of Adcraft members today who are students who are joining us in this Zoom. And just thinking back to when you were in college, you know, what was the class or conversation or professor that kind of set you down this path?
So there's two. The first one, growing up, I always knew I wanted to be in advertising. I didn't know exactly what that meant, but I knew that I wanted to be in advertising. So when I was at DePaul and I got into my sophomore year, when I had done what I needed, all the prerequisites to take my first advertising class, the first day of advertising class, I walked up to my professor, Catherine Schulte, who is still someone I talk to today. She's amazing. And I said, I want to do advertising, so help me. And she really took me under her wing, and through that class helped me. She's the one who introduced me to the Northwestern IMC, which is Integrated Marketing Communications master's program that they have. So then I applied for that. This was 3 years later. I applied for that and I went to school there. And that's when the second turn happened. And this is the one that I think, if I look back now on all these years, really there's this pivotal moment that changed everything. And that was when I had a student mentor going into Northwestern, and his name is Neil Rubenstein. He was supposed to show me like where the soda machines are, where the computer lab is, kind of transition me into my first week of school. It's 2 weeks before I started. And he asked me the question, do you like math? And what he said was, there's a new kind of marketing. This was in the late 90s. So there's a new kind of marketing that's coming up that is this data-driven marketing. And if you learn those skills now, then you'll have them. You can always go back to advertising because you're going to take advertising classes as well. But if you don't learn these skills, then you're not going to have them and you'll have to develop them later. And I was like, well, that's really interesting. And I actually really do love math. And it was in grad school when I also went up to my statistics professor. I fell in love with statistics. I weirdly still love statistics. I love debating different kinds of models, different ways that different algorithms work as we're getting into, you know, neural networks and random forest and all of this stuff now. It's really fascinating to me. So I walked up to him and I said, this is really fascinating to me. Can you help me? And again, he took time after class. He taught me how to build regression models in SAS. He helped me. I was at Northwestern. I audited a class at the Graduate School of Math about the theory of matrices because I wanted to understand how it all works. Something about me, I always like to peel everything back to understand how it works. And then I get to a point where it's beyond me. And that's what the theory of matrices was. So I was very glad that I was on a pass-fail there. But I really got to understand how all of this works. And I really found this passion for data. I mean, I'm very proud of being the geek that I am. And this was really the moment when it all started.
Yeah, that's incredible. It's funny that you wanted to be in advertising from a young age. I remember whistling jingles and can remember all of them from childhood. So there must be some kindred spirits there.
Right.
So a question, when you actually got into the marketing world, professional world, was there a moment when you kind of realized all that effort, all that drive, the different kind of approach that you took? Was there a moment when you kind of recognized that the value that you brought to an organization?
There's two. So the first one is, I think the first one was where I learned about me, and the second one is I learned about the value. So when I started at Jaguar Land Rover, they brought me in to build a database and to build acquisition and retention programs where they didn't exist. And what I learned is that I love that. I love a challenge. I love driving change. And I love putting something together myself. So that was really the first moment. The second was when I was at Motorola years later, and I was put in charge of e-commerce. I was running CRM and analytics at the time and parts of digital, and then we moved into e-commerce. And as you know, this was again probably 12 to 15 years ago now. It was the time when technology and data had just gotten to the next level, where you could really put together a tech stack that was enabling the whole sales process. You could really, programmatic was really starting to become mature at that point, to the point, I guess it was going from nascent to mature because it was still called real-time bidding, but to start to understand how you would use technology, segmentation, everything all together, and then layering good creative. And I think this is, one of the most fun things about that for me was, I talk about this a lot, like right brain, left brain. You need to have both. And without the creativity, without the good creative, it's nothing. Because how do you test what you're doing? You run what you believe to be good creative against either a null ad or a charity ad or something, so that you understand the impact that you're making. So it's all about the creative in the end. This was one of the first really fun lessons in that. We were running, it was all digital, and we had a new tablet that was waterproof. And so we had a few different iterations of the advertisements it was called the Zoom tablet. And the two that performed the best were, and it's very timely actually this week, because it was this actual week when we were running the creative test. There was one that was spill proof, and it showed a wine glass, and it was more focused at moms. And then there was one that was more broadly targeted, which was Blarney proof. And it had some St. Patrick's Day beads and some green beer spilled on the tablet. And that ad far and away won and did the best. So it was really good, just to see what good creative does and how it breaks through. Even, in the moments of banner blindness, there's going to be something if it's interesting enough. So that was.
I love the term Blarney proof. Hopefully you guys coin that and trademark that, because that has potential.
Yeah, and I love it's all about the creative. So, Melissa, as Andrew mentioned in the beginning, this past week marks a year of COVID. You mentioned a lot about teachers and how inspiring they were to you. That's been such a challenge. First responders. I think we have to acknowledge the fact that in our industry, we're very fortunate to be able to work from home. But that being said, I know you've done some unique things to keep your team motivated during this past year. Can you touch on a little bit of some of those examples?
Yeah, I think the first thing was, and this is probably the biggest surprise to me, we had been doing in-person Second City training. And when everything moved virtual, I was debating, do we just cancel this? This was, if we think back a year ago, right? We thought that this was going to be quick. Do we just wait it out, whatever? And in talking to the Second City team, they said, look, we can do it virtual. Why don't we try that? And I have to say, this was one of the most fun and one of my favorite things, because we got to really connect and have fun. And what it did is it recreated the, we talk about how you miss the in-person interaction and the joking. Someone on my team said this early in the pandemic, and it really stuck with me. I missed the saying, oh, those are really cute shoes. Where'd you get them? And I need to run to Target at lunch. Do you want to come with me? And that stuck with me so much. And what this really did is it created that moment. We were in the chat joking around, we were connecting on a personal level, we were moved, because what you have when you're, we all talk about Zoom fatigue, whatever, it's just about meeting to meeting to meeting, and you're constantly staring at technology and trying to think, and you don't have the walking to the water cool, whatever. So I think that was, for me, one of the most fun things that I also enjoyed, I think, along with the team. We also were doing virtual happy hours, which again was just a time for us to connect across the wider Cadillac team. And then as we started to go through, we also introduced a few listening sessions. Laura Thornton will be here next week. Her and I did this across our teams. And as this was going on, there's a lot of unique situations where people are trying to homeschool, and especially last year when there was no hybrid model or anything, don't have daycare or nannies that they used to have, or people who are living alone. So we really tried to create some connections there as well. I think it was a little better once the weather got better and school was out, but that was something else that we did to just try to connect.
And I know General Motors and Cadillac, did a part in helping others during that time. Can you touch a little bit on those efforts?
Yeah, so there were a few things. I think I'm very proud of working for GM and Cadillac in general. I'm just constantly so impressed with what this company does. A great example of this is that very early on in the pandemic, we started making ventilators and we started making face masks. And we got ventilators out really before summer. And when we were helping everyone with that to me was something where you just, as a company, we couldn't produce cars. We looked at how do we redeploy resources and really help the world. That was amazing. And I think just, that was under Mary Barra's leadership. And I'm constantly also just talk about who I'm inspired by. I'm constantly inspired by her vision, her compassion, her direction. It's just really amazing. And then at Cadillac, we quickly pivoted, and thank you to both of you, because during this time, we had just launched our Make Your Way ad campaign. We were very excited. We launched it at the Oscars, and the tone was immediately wrong. And, under your leadership here and the amazing work of everyone on all of our teams together, we got those commercials off the air immediately. We pulled together a new spot within 7 days, completely, to use the word of last year, unprecedented. And then the thing about it was we were really following consumer sentiment, and, people were, all of us, right? People collectively were really scared, unsure of what was happening next. There was just a lot of emotion. There's you're afraid of the disease, you're afraid of your job, you're afraid of all these different things. People were impacted. So we created the We Have Your Back campaign, where we talked about, call us, we can talk through financing options. Do you need your car serviced? We can come bring the car, we can go pick up the car and bring it back to you. If you need to buy a car, we can deliver it to you, all with white glove, literally service and disinfected, so you're safe. So, and then we also created a first responders program, because, a lot of people, there was a big shift. There's a lot of healthcare workers, first responders who still need to go to work. A lot of people who were taking public transportation and now had to drive, or if something happened with their car, they had to be out there. And so we were doing whatever we could to really help them.
Yeah, it was an amazing collaborative effort to really have the brand kind of lead through that time in all of our lives. I'm going to shift a little bit here, but also remind those at home there is a Q&A feature. So if you touch the screen, there should be a little Q&A where you can ask questions. There will be a session at the end where whatever's asked, we'll do our best to wade through it and really grill Melissa on those questions. So make them good. So a little bit of a shift here. We're talking about Cadillac, and it's an amazing brand. It's approaching its 120th birthday, and it's such an amazing luxury brand that keeps redefining itself. What does success for Cadillac really look like in the next 5 years from your standpoint?
Yeah, I mean, the next 5 years, we're moving into EV. So by the end of the decade, we plan on being an all EV brand. Cadillac will lead GM in this. So as we look at that, I think that is absolutely the biggest thing that we're looking at. We're also really looking at, as we look at how do we build our brand, how do we tell the right stories to build credibility with an EV. So how we do full funnel brand building marketing. And we're really looking at, we've just launched Escalade, we've got Blackwing, now we've got Lyriq coming, we'll have Celestiq coming after that. So we're looking at, as we have these amazing halo vehicles, how do we use those to really tell the Cadillac brand and technology story?
Yeah, absolutely. And we're all definitely excited for this next chapter. So this past year, Cadillac really, besides mid-cycle vehicle refreshes, Cadillac really launched their last all new, built from the ground up internal combustion engine vehicle in the 2021 Escalade. And so it was a big moment. Cadillac, the Escalade is an amazing halo vehicle for our brand. But it's clear that we're going in a different direction, right? A more modern direction, and a direction where, there's going to be some big impact with EVs. Can you maybe elaborate a little bit on how EVs might affect the future of marketing for Cadillac and where this might go?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a lot of different ways. The first thing is, as we look at EVs, they're the biggest manifestation of GM's 000 strategy. So how we're telling that story and how we're part of that bigger story is really important. And I think, just a little case in point, but that we can all relate to, is at the Super Bowl, we had 2 ads. We had the GM ad, which featured the Lyriq, but really talked about EV being all in, and looking at someone who we should all look up to, Norway, who has a very high EV penetration. And then layering that story with Edgar Scissorhands, the Cadillac commercial. So you can really see how the Cadillac and GM stories are layering together and building up and making us all better. I think we also start to see a big shift in our design, and a lot of focus on beautiful design. The Lyriq, honestly, is probably my favorite vehicle that I've ever seen. As we look to some of the other future vehicles, I get excited about those, but the Lyriq is, I can't wait to have that car. And so like design, having that template and having that new shift is going to be really huge too. And then there's all the barriers that we have to start looking at, and the way that the EV customers, I think today EV customers are a little different. So how do we market to those customers? But then as the rest of the market starts following in, how do we educate those customers and help them understand that what is a perceived barrier isn't actually a barrier as we move forward, because we're making sure that we have the right range over 300 miles, that we have the right charging ecosystem, and that we can help them with their home charging. So all these things that might be perceived barriers, we're really helping to break down.
Well, and one thing you mentioned, Melissa, in answering that question was a lot about storytelling. And that is very clear in all the briefs you give us, the importance of storytelling. So why do you think that's important? And because it's clearly a way, for Cadillac to connect with consumers. And it's a great brief to get to tell a story. But tell us a little bit about why that's so important to you.
Well, I think we can just look at ourselves as human beings to answer that. Everybody loves a good story, from the time that we're little and we want to hear bedtime stories to whatever we're reading. It's also how we relate to each other. I think if you think about when friends get together and you're talking and you launch into something, you take that breath, you start with your hands, everyone leans in because they're ready to hear a good story. And it's a way that we relate information to each other in a very engaging way. And, if you think, we all know which of our friends are the better storytellers, and we're just really attracted to them. So it's like, that's really what we look to, is how do we create that kind of conversation? How do we have that kind of storytelling? We talked a little bit about the Super Bowl ad. Like there's this story that just draws you in.
And it was clear that the briefs and things that came from Cadillac around storytelling really started last Oscars, and it was telling the story of Regina King. So she was kind of your first storyteller. So she's fabulous and fierce, as we all know. So tell us a little bit about that partnership and how that all kind of came about.
So Regina is a huge fan of Cadillac. We have been talking to her as a brand for a long time. She had her first Escalade in 1999. She's been driving them ever since. And so there's just a fantastic, I think, history as we look there. But when we talked a little bit about the Make Your Way campaign. We talked about Never Stop Arriving. When we talk about those, there's this inherent Cadillac DNA that is about a person who's driven, about a person who has this almost like an effervescence about them that attracts people, and that there's this thing in them. One of my favorite facts is that when we were doing some of our initial M1 analysis, to hint at what we'll probably talk about, we saw that the title of CEO or president way over-indexed within the Cadillac database. And that's because we have a bunch of entrepreneurs and people who are change makers. We wrote the manifesto before the Oscars of last year. We shared that with Regina, and she said, this could be my story. And in fact, that's how she wove that in and told her story from the time that she was, in 227 and a child actress to when she then got into the big screen. And I think, we all remember her in Jerry Maguire, moving into being an Oscar-winning actress and then making her directorial debut and starting to tell her own stories that she thinks is so important. She's such a role model. She's such an amazing person. And she really mirrors what we as a brand are trying to convey. She's amazing to work with, Emily, as you said.
Yeah.
She's definitely outstanding, and appreciate the plug. There may be a little segment on, audience coming up soon, perhaps. Really appreciate that. But obviously, branded content and media-led content is so important to this brand. Why do you feel that is in this day and age?
Yeah, I mean, I think when we look at anything that we do, and you guys hear me say this all the time, probably to the point where you just want to do this when I say it, but we really have to show up differently. And that's really the key to being able to break through, to having this thing, whatever this thing is that you're trying to convey, resonate with people. So we always start with, who's the right audience? Who are we trying to talk to? Then we need to understand the insight about them. That's where we get into, what are our manifestos? What are the things that we believe? And how do we then resonate with a person who believes the things that we believe? Once we know that, so now we know who they are, we know where they are, we need to have the right activation to really show up differently. And I think we've already talked about a lot of creative executions that are very much in line with that. I think, looking at the Escalade launch, there's so many that I could go into. I think one that really was a great example of this was with James Blake. And we had his first listen, and it was the debut of his new song. We had some of his top fans who got to go in the new Escalade. Now we were, as a brand, Cadillac is very aligned with music anyway. It's why our first EV will be called Lyric, and we are named in more, as a manufacturer, more song lyrics than any other. So music is just something that for us we're very aligned to. Well, James was doing this first listen, and the Escalade AKG system has 36 speakers. It's absolutely amazing. So we put them in this car to bring them to what they didn't know was going to be an in-person concert with him. And that is how he debuted his new song. It's how we had a, kind of first showing, one of the first showings of the Escalade, and it worked really well. And I think those are the kinds of things of like, it's interesting. You want to listen to this song, you're going to see the vehicle along the way. It's really what we mean by showing up differently and how we like to get in and tell these stories.
Yeah, no, really, really appreciate that. And I think, we love that platform, and kudos to Kristen Naimi and Jordan Shaw for pulling that off. I think, COVID definitely gave us different production situations than we would ever expect, right? You have to trust that you can sit on a Zoom and actually film, talent and tell a story. And that's a big bridge of trust there to actually make that happen, right? So with media-led content, it seems like things are very, very purposeful, right? With the partners that we partner with the stories that we want to tell, even with the features you want to highlight, right? There's a reason why we highlighted the AKG system and James Blake, and maybe not the rear backup cam, right? So with the talent that we bring in, Cadillac has really partnered with some quite amazing people this past year, whether it's Regina, MBA coach Becky Hammond, who's just breaking all sorts of rules in the industry in a good way. Killer Mike from Run the Jewels, Fred Armisen, Riza, number of them. What do they all have in common? What does Cadillac look for in these personalities that they want to partner with?
It's a lot of what we've talked about. The first thing is we really want people to align with our brand values and to embody this spirit that is so Cadillac, this innovator, this light maker type spirit that is very Cadillac. We want people that we'll be proud of, and people who are, just really, again, like innovators. They align with our values, and they really help tell our story. And I think if you, even going back to, Emily, as you were talking about the Oscars last year, if we look at how Regina really helped us tell her story there, and then that evolved into the Escalade spot that was so beautifully done, and really told the story of her. It continued her story and the story of the vehicle. And so that's really what we're looking for.
Yeah, I think what's interesting too for everyone at home, like Cadillac just doesn't partner with people once. There's almost a methodical breadcrumb trail as to how they started working with Regina, and even take Killer Mike and his partner in Run the Jewels, and working with DJ Shadow. That is a track that the Leo team features in all of our TVCs. And so to work with them later, it just, again, I think shows that commitment to them being genuine, and really helps our brand as well.
Yeah, and before we leave storytelling, of course, we have to talk about the Super Bowl. So if you were living off the grid in a mountain cabin somewhere, I'll give you a quick overview of this spot. It was a fantasy continuation of Kim and Edward Scissorhands having a child, and his name is Edgar. And just like any teenager, he has some, challenges in his life, but it makes it worse that if you have scissor hands. And one of the challenges is driving, and enter Cadillac Lyric with hands-free Super Cruise, and, the rest is history. So, a lot of people ask us about kind of the inside scoop on this, especially about the talent. So, give us a kind of a perspective on how it all happened, a little bit of the journey, and, what was it like working with Timothy?
A question that's not the first time I've been asked that question. So I think the first thing is, when we started with this, there was a very clear brief from our global CMO of GM, Deborah Wall. And that brief really was like, we need to be very compelling and arresting and just bring a story to the world. And for us, it also gave us the opportunity, I think, when you think about the Super Bowl, and people have probably heard me say this before, but, we always say that people that we worry that they don't want to see advertising. But the Super Bowl is the proof that people love advertising if you do it well. So everyone wants to see your ad, right? So we wanted to tell a story here. So as we were going through the concepts, I think when this one came up, we just all had this moment of like, yes, that's the story that we have to tell, and we have to tell that story. It really, so it's like, not only did it do what we needed it to do for the product, it showed the lyric beautifully, it showed Super Cruise in such a unique way that just sat with you, but just this whole Edgar Scissorhands, and we started a movement to get a sequel. So that was like all really amazing. And I think the other thing that's so interesting about this is, as we were going through and talked to the talent, so Winona Ryder and Timothée Chalamet and even Tim Burton and Disney, everyone had this like, yes moment, and yes, I want to do that. And everyone wanted to sign up. And it was very interesting for me, not being as familiar with Timothée Chalamet. I texted my 16-year-old niece, and I got back a lot of capital OMG, I want to meet him. He's amazing. So I learned a lot through that process, but I think he was absolutely so amazing in the spot. I can see why he will be Hollywood's next leading man.
Yeah, that's great. And you talked about how one of the unexpected results is that there's this movement to have a sequel. So, I mean, talk about Cadillac impacting culture, that you've then started this incredible movement. Also, in terms of results, I know the morning of the Super Bowl, my favorite headline from Variety was, "This commercial is going to break the internet." So what do you think? Did you break the internet?
We'd like to think that we did break the internet. I think, when you look at, I'll go through a few. When you look at so a few things. First of all, going back to storytelling, we didn't really know if during the Super Bowl we were going to break the internet. We had a lot of a very clear program for retargeting people who are watching, for how do we keep that momentum going after the Super Bowl. I think how much we got during the Super Bowl was a big surprise that we really loved. We were the #2 most watched spot on YouTube. We were trending on both Google and Twitter, number 5 and 17 respectively. But my favorite one, honestly, was where we really broke the internet was on TikTok. And it was unexpected to us. And I can't tell you how many of the executives that I work with were texting me during the Super Bowl, sending me screenshots that either their children or their nieces or younger cousins had sent them, saying, "You're all over TikTok, you're blowing up TikTok." And I think that was something that, it's not a platform that we've actively engaged on yet. And so to see that, it was really amazing. And I think just a little check in the box of how we definitely broke the internet. And I think, what's interesting, we saw record views on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter. But we also saw on Cadillac.com record traffic for 3 days in a row. So luckily we had prepared and nothing broke, but we broke the internet.
Well, and I'm sure you're not surprised by this, but one of my favorite pastimes is teasing John. So M1 is, and audience is definitely something we want to get to. I know we only have 15 minutes left, so let's get into that section. But I will say that the audience data insights has really, helped all of us across agencies to really stay focused on doing what matters, and we really appreciate that.
Appreciate that plug, Emily, so much. And of course, we have amazing creative, and you have to talk about how do we get it in front of people, right? What are the media vehicles, and who are those people we want to get in front of? So let's talk about one of Melissa's favorite topics, and I kid you not, it's kind of like her Christmas. It's data and audiences. And anytime we have a new audience to share, our audience division is led by David Lai and team, and they're an amazing group. And it literally is like Christmas. I love the meetings because they're so insightful on the brand and the people we want to target. Tell us a little bit about why audiences are more important now than ever, almost as important as creative, some would say, almost.
Yeah, there's a lot of reasons that I think we're all very familiar with. Like, let me tick off the things that we all know. The first thing is that When we look at TV, there's less inventory because viewership is down and costs are up. We've got walled gardens and the proliferation of walled gardens. We've got a coming cookieless world and understanding how we know who we're targeting and how we reach them. And then I think, you know, the one that is really important also is like when we look at our budgets and how we efficiently reach people, you know, the Cadillac people are very unique. And so we don't, you know, we need to look at how we're talking to the right people at the right time. So as we look at it, we look at when people are going to be in market, and we look at their propensity for Cadillac. And this is how we really start to get to the point of targeting efficiently in the right way in a world where there's all these things swirling around.
That's dead on. And I think what's interesting is Melissa's been a big proponent, obviously, throughout her career of segmentation, of direct marketing. She's been a big proponent of our audience platform, M1. I'm sure anyone in the industry has already heard us about this already. But when we're talking about 250 million US adults that we can target one-to-one, it's kind of an unfair advantage, we feel. But then when we actually partnered with Melissa, she took it to the next level, kind of a level we weren't really expecting, and going further into conquesting. Can you talk about, you know, kind of the mission that you gave us and how you saw M1 really helping with conquesting?
Yeah, so I'll talk about a little, and then I have a little surprise for John. So when we look at conquesting, and as I was saying, we start to look at what people's propensity is, and when they're going to be in market. And so as we go out into conquesting, we start to understand who these audiences are. And then we look at what's the right messaging for us to have for them and when. So if you think about someone who is in market in 12 months, they really should just be seeing the Super Bowl ad and not a whole lot more. But if you're in market in 2 to 3 months, then you really need to understand what are the latest in market. And as we look at that, there's this other layer of audience, and how do we know who we're talking to, what drives them? So I talk about the cube all the time of propensity, time to in market, and audience. And I have this cube that sits on my desk. So if you think about Cadillac propensity and time to market and audience, every person is going to fit into a different, and I'll make sure it doesn't get into the background. Every person will fit into a different part of the cube. And that's how you really start to understand who you're conquesting, and even from a retention perspective, and how you need to be talking to them. So M1 really gives us the gift of being able to take real people. We built a model with the Carat Dentsu team and found an audience that's 19 times more likely to want a Cadillac. So we talked to those people, and going back to your last question of why is this important? When we started running experiments in Addressable, and now we're looking at what's the right creative, what's the right time, whatever, we held out a control group, and we saw a 29% lift in sales. So, you know, I think if you're looking at why is it important, like there's your answer right there, but it goes from brand building all the way down to the in-market messaging.
Greatly appreciate that. And I'm truly moved that you kept that gift of what we call Grady's Cube. It's funny because I think we were thinking things of almost two-dimensional, right? And then Melissa's like, well, what if we go three-dimensional? We're like, what does that mean? And again, through partnership, we really found out different ways to approach audiences and add even more depth to audiences. So it's been quite amazing. We only have 10 minutes left, so I'm just going to kind of speed through. I think, Emily, why don't we jump into moving at the speed of culture quick? Because there are some really good, as much as I would talk about audience all day long, there are some interesting things we want to bring up, and there's a couple of really great questions too. So let's dive into gaming really quick.
Yeah, so the modern marketing is the first part of this seminar, and then at the speed of culture. So, we have two quick examples. First is gaming. Gaming skyrocketed during COVID. Also, there was a game called Horizon, which is a street game that you play through Xbox that Cadillac already had a relationship with. So there were 5 vehicles that were already in the game. But this past summer, you guys made history by being the first automotive brand to launch a gaming club. So can you give us kind of the inside scoop on how that came about?
Yeah, I think it's really interesting. Gaming's something that we were talking about for a long time. I went to our Austin Innovation Center when I started, and there were a few people there who walked me through the gaming landscape because I wasn't as familiar with it. And it was an area that I think we thought was an important thing to do, but I think didn't know how to get in, and it wasn't the right time. As we went into the pandemic, I think, there was a creative director at Burnett who realized that this was the moment when people were connecting and gaming in a way that was very different from really any other time. It was this way that you could connect with friends, that you could be in touch and have these moments. Again, we talked about earlier, how do you virtually have moments where, you're used to, sitting in a cafe and having a coffee? How do you recreate human connection? And gaming was it. So as you said, we quickly got in and figured out how to get the Cadillac Gaming Club in there. And it happened fast. It was, we had this Incite, and I think about a month later we had launched.
That's awesome. So the kind of the next pivot, brought on by the pandemic, Cadillac recognized that consumers really wanted to shop differently for vehicles, and being a luxury brand, we had the opportunity to offer a white glove service. So 2 years ago, our Isobar team brought, to you an idea around Cadillac Live, which you greenlit, and has become more impressive, I think, since the pandemic. And basically, like we're all live streaming now, you can live stream with a live agent, to take a walk around of your vehicle and learn everything you possibly need. What has fascinated you about the past, 2 years, and then even through the pandemic, about Cadillac Live?
So I think just what you said, I mean, Cadillac Live is absolutely amazing. And if you haven't tried it, I highly recommend trying it. You go on, you start a session, and we have all the vehicles in a studio and experts. So it's almost like your own personal auto show. But there's props there. So this is like, if you want to know, what will my golf clubs look like in the back of that car? How does a stroller fit in the back of the car? They can show you all of that. So to your question, John, like what's been most fascinating or what's been most important is, first of all, Cadillac Live was doing very well pre-pandemic. I think people, want to be able to sit in their pajamas, be on a one-way video chat because they can't see you, and learn about a vehicle at their time, especially luxury buyers. They don't always have time to go to the dealership by the time they're closing or whatever. But as we moved into the pandemic and there was no going to the dealership, there was no shopping, there was a long time when sales at dealerships were closed. This just enabled that so seamlessly and in a really fun way. And then as we've moved through, now we have one-to-many, so we can have bigger events and live streams. So, as we figure out what this hybrid world is, as we go back to whatever the next normal will be, I think Cadillac Live really gives us the foundation and the basis to be able to adapt and to meet not only consumer needs, but really consumer delights.
Well, and I think we talk about moving at the speed of culture, and one of the ways to do that is just to get things done, break through barriers. The three of us have a text chain going all the time about projects, and like any good late night talk show host, John and I have a game for the last 5 minutes that we'll play with you called Name That Chain. And what we've done is we've taken more or less screen grabs of some of our conversations with you, and you're going to match the text with the project. So on the 6 projects, Super Bowl, First Listen, we have Your Back, Gaming, the Escalade launch, and a little wild card, which will be left over at the end. And this just gives everybody an authentic view into Melissa, and we won't embarrass you, I promise. So we'll start with number 1. Melissa, Hi, about to present blank to dealers. Can I please get a soundbite? And I replied, the club allows players to share, connect, and play with Cadillac products alongside actual Cadillac fans. And they can customize their cars, correct? Yep. Perfect. Exactly what I thought. Love it. So which project was that?
The one we just talked about, gaming, me making sure that I understand.
That is correct. All right, John, for the next one.
Next up, so morning, everyone. Here's a list for I almost said it. Here's a list for our Everywhere Strategy partners: Killer Mike, Becky Hammond, Fred, James Blake, and Regina and Riza. Melissa responds back with, "Love it. What about Drake?" And I knew that was coming, of course. What could this possibly be?
Escalade everywhere.
That is correct. And Melissa asks about Drake all the time. Every project. What about Drake? Next one. Okay, thanks. Let's regroup when we have costs. Go team. Gotta go wash groceries now. Emily, air hugs. John, air hugs for me as well.
Oh goodness. So wait, this is one of the ones on the left because.
So think about you're washing groceries.
Yeah, no, this is, I think I know what this is about, but I don't think I see it. But this is when we were talking about
that we have your back.
Yes. Oh,
yeah.
There we have your back. Got it.
Yes, yes.
So I was thinking
helping
of
you out there a little bit.
Yep.
Hence the air hug,
Yes. No, I was thinking about our Detroit strong.
Yeah. So
yeah, early on we were looking at different artists, and this text is, we got James Blake. Emily's response, awesome. Melissa, the tennis player? No, the musician, which is funny because we actually are also talking with the tennis player as well. We only work with James Blake's over here at Cadillac. What would this go to?
This is first listen.
Awesome.
That is correct.
Not first match.
All right, here's one. Emily, let's do a quick huddle on the latest rough cuts. And Melissa, and this is an insight to her personality. Yes, that's helpful. I know the creative team is overworked, so I want to give them clear feedback. Not kidding. This is true. Emily, thanks. There's a little hint to the time of year. And what project would that be?
The Super Bowl.
That is correct. And the last one, Melissa, let's get the data and we can decide. Love it. There are no must-haves. Love it. Let me know if you think tomorrow is reasonable. Amazing. Woohoo and love it. So awesome. Thank you. I'll answer that for you. It's the wild card. It was a culmination of lots of your text to us. And I know we are at time and we just want to say awesome. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. And thank you everyone for the Q&A. I think there's some really great questions in here. I know, everyone has a schedule to keep, so we'll respond back. I think we've answered a couple of them, but there are some really great questions in there. So let us get those out and we'll get them out through Andrew and Michelle.
Awesome, guys. Hey, Melissa, thank you so much for sharing all of your knowledge, and John and Emily. I think I was receiving tons and tons of texts through this. It's unanimous that we should have the media side and the creative side always represented together on this, because you guys just really came off as the team that you are. So thank you guys. And I can tell you from my phone to this, it was very well received. So thanks so much.
Thanks.
And
thank you.
To everyone out there, I know we're a couple minutes over. Tomorrow is St. Patrick's Day. I'm going to steal Melissa's line. Be sure to stay Blarney proof tomorrow. Be safe, be smart. And if you haven't signed up for March Madness, I'm going to grab John Kovalcik as my partner. I think Paul Moreski's out there. And I know Shane Dwyer is looking to get on a virtual team. So sign up for March Madness and we can see you all next Thursday. But until then, have a great rest of the week. Thank you guys so much, and go test drive a Cadillac.